Welcome to the next episode of the Combat Ready Frontline podcast. I am joined here by Remo, Ojaste. My name is Zezeran, and we are going to answer your questions that were asked of us on stage at Startup Day 2024 when we did our presentation. Remo, how are you doing today, mate?
I'm good, as always.
Excellent, always ready to go. So we did this demonstration at Startup Day. So what I thought, we're going to do a little debrief, describe to people what this thing was that we did on stage. And then we got some questions via the Votemo app that we didn't get a chance to answer. And I thought we could go through those and answer those people's questions right now. So first of all, let's use your words to describe what was this 10-minute thing that we did on stage.
Yeah, so in the Startup Day, it's a huge business festival. And what we did is that we showcased on the main stage one of our training methods, which is a field training exercise or practical leadership training. So we took some of the participants from the audience pretty much, and we ran a hostage rescue on the stage. So what it does is that it puts the participants under pressure and in a situation where they have never been. And now they have to make decisions. And if you have to make decisions in a situation where you have never been before, the mistakes come out and they are really easily connectable with the main principles, how leadership works, how teamwork works, and all the kind of characteristics of a person and how we are built as a human beings. They come out and you're able to have a really good understanding where you are in terms of your leadership skills and team building skills. So it's a really fast-paced environment, and the mistakes come out really fast. And that's what we wanted to showcase on a stage, and I think we did quite good. Mm-hmm. And everything went according to the plan. So
let's, this is a on-stage, more performance-oriented demonstration of the FTX exercises and programs that we run, where we get people out in the field, give them laser tag weapons or some other system, and put them in stressful situations. And when you're under stress, it's highlighting where you can improve. And I went through this FTX for the first time when we were in America, in Dallas, first time that I was a participant. And yes, it was a team bonding exercise. Yes, we worked better as a group and all that stuff, but it highlighted to me the things I need to work on. And I kind of knew it. None of these things are probably massive surprises to us. We're not Jungian Freud things, bringing deep things out from our psyche. For me, it's when everything hits the fan and the stress is in the middle of that moment, I get a little overwhelmed. I know that already. This is not new information to me, but it highlights that we're in the middle of the battlefield there. Enemies coming from that direction. I've got a team that I'm not in control of. I don't know what to do. In that moment, yes. And we know the only way to improve in those situations is to put yourself in a stressful situation and live through it and work through it. So that's what FTX highlighted for me when we were there. And we were trying to demonstrate a bit of that in a more performance way at Startup Day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what military a lot of does. They have this kind of capability demonstrations, and they actually showcase either a new technology, a new weapon system, or new whatever tactics. Mm-hmm. And it's always demonstration first. Mm-hmm. Always. If you start teaching someone a new skill, then there has to be a demo team who demonstrates it before, so people actually see how it looks like in a perfect world. And then we take the personnel that you want to train and put themselves into situations so they actually can learn from their own mistakes.
And that reflects a lot of what we teach, that when there is a training program, or if we're looking at the way that we're learning, it should be approximately 65% practical, you doing it for 65%. Think about that. Think about the corporate trainings that you've been on, or your company. It's just you sitting in a lecture room, or even at university, at college. It's all you sit into a lecture the whole time. We think it should be 65% practical, then about the 25% demonstrational, watching somebody else do it, and then really the last 15% or whatever's left on the end. That's the theoretical side. So you were trying to exercise this 25 or 15, 25% of demonstrational.
Yeah, and actually, that's not even what only we believe, but it's written down, and how US Army, for example, prepares their people going to the battlefield or teaching any skill. Like if you want to be a mechanic, like theory is awesome, but if someone demonstrates you how to, change the tire of a vehicle, you have much better understanding, but you still have to go and practice it, and then you get an actual experience how it is. So that's the kind of the purpose of it all.
Sure. So this is like many things we teach, these are lessons that are learned from the battlefield, lessons that have learned from the military. And actually, it turns out these are really good ways for everybody to do their thing. Because there's almost some idea, I'm thinking back to the college example. Most of college is sitting there watching a lecturer talk for some time. Then there's one session a week of practical. You're in a lab. I don't know, I did computer science where they're actually doing something in a lab. So it's mostly theoretical. And I don't know if there's some idea that if you're a smart guy and you're a smart guy, so you're at college, well, you should be able to sit and focus. Like, no, actually, it's just not a human. Everyone who's ever sat through a boring ass lecture knows it doesn't know how smart you are. It doesn't quite work like that.
And it's like it's boring until you're not able to understand and put those concepts in a environment which you have already an understanding. So, for example, like when I was in the military, I didn't understand very well that the principles that were taught to me that I can use on the battlefield, that they are usable in the civilian life as well. And it's mainly for showing you a problem or a problem-solving methodology from a different angle, in a different context, and you're able to connect the dots and then actually apply it in your own life as well, because now you understand, okay, that's how it works from a different angle.
Sure. So this exercise that we did on stage, I was a hostage. All of a sudden, someone, and this all took about 10 minutes, someone puts a hood over my head, and then we've got some operatives. Walk us through what was happening, because really I had a hood over my head most of the time, and I was sitting there as a hostage.
So pretty much we had 2 units or 2 squads of separate people, and you were taken as a hostage. So there is always role players who are actually acting as your enemy. And their main role over there is to have a more realistic training environment where enemy has also a say. If I do something in a static environment, like if I shoot a target and it's static, it's static. It's not a real life. So having role players over there, it provides you a better way of adjusting, and based on the change of the situation, you can adjust your strategies and tactics. So you were taken into hostage, and then 2 units came and started to rescue. They had to coordinate things between themselves, not to shoot each other. Then they had to communicate very clearly. They had to prioritize sometimes because situation changed, and then they had to decentralize, like the 4 laws of combat. They had to utilize all of those principles. And eventually, if the team worked well, they eventually got you safe. And that's the end result. We pretty much it showcases that the battlefield is nothing else than solving problems. And on a battlefield, you just have multiple problems coming towards you on a very rapid pace. And you have to then choose in which order you start solving them. So people who've been in combat or been in the elite units, they understand that all they are is they're very trained people of solving problems in a very crazy situations. And that's what I think it showcases, and that's what I think we achieved there as well.
You know, that reminds me of something I heard Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, once said. He said, all a CEO is just a sophisticated decision-making machine. Decision. It's just a decision machine. And he was like looking for ways to automate that decision machine, because that's the way this guy's work. And it's exactly what you're saying. The battlefield is just decision.
Yeah, that's why military has done a great job in terms of describing and writing down what's the best decision-making process for their field. And it's called military decision-making process. And that's for a strategic level more. And then for the frontline troops, as the pace is faster, you don't have so many resources to put the whole team to plan. So you have to act more about your gut feeling and your training. So that's called TLP, so Troop Leading Procedure. So everything is actually written out. And now those lessons have been written down with making mistakes. And now, as there has been a lot of fighting going on for decades, like war is there, you can't do nothing about it. So that has been an incredible teacher, how to make better decisions, and it's all written down. And it's actually, I think the MDMP is like 150 pages. So it's very thorough process if you think of the corporate process and everything like that. But now you just train and you understand what the decision making is all about. But if you're actually in the real situation, you actually rely a lot on your training, what you have been trained. So if you actually have a really tough process, I don't know, sales, it seems like very complicated. You have to pick up a phone, you have to have a first line, then you have this structure, what you want to follow. Now, initially it may look very complicated because you've never done it before, but if you train and train and train, it becomes like a second nature. It becomes in your muscle memory, so to say. And eventually you're getting very good at it. And the more you practice, the better you get. And if you're able to practice it in a real situation, then that's the main goal. Now you learn in a real situation, you adapt your training towards the real situation, and you constantly evolve your knowledge and your know-how, how to make better decisions, because you've just tried to do it constantly, every day, everywhere, all the time. And that's how you get good.
I think a lot when we're talking about this training, we're always relating it back to business and how do the military examples relate to the business. And I think some of the friction come, we talk about there's the training part and then there's the real environment part. And for you guys, that's when you go to war. I make the analogy as a comedian. That's when you're stepping up to the biggest and biggest stage as a comedian. And for a business person, the real life is every day. When we're in the office, how do we do every day? And I think we need to keep the distinction in mind that every day in the office, there are some things that I do that are quite technical. So I'm thinking about software programming here, let's say. Okay, I know that API, I know that library, and I might need to learn a new technology, but I learn it, but I'm sort of just doing it on my own. That's solitary focus time. But pretty much everything else that we do, as soon as we look up from that computer and stop just doing the focus time, that's all leadership. Everything past that. And we have this idea that, well, I'm a coder, so I just need to learn more code, and that's me training. So what does these guys of the military have to teach me? Well, as soon as you look up from your screen, any other interaction is a leadership activity, and we can train that. And it's sort of not really realized that you got to train that bit as well in a workplace.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of in which environment you are in this world, you have to interact with people. And you may be very good at your technical skills, but if you don't know how to communicate that, if you don't know how to build a relationship, if you don't understand how to build trust, then it's very complicated to showcase that you are brilliant. So there are some skills in this world that require training, and communication is training, teamwork is training. So all of those things, like, you can get by in life if you're a genius in something, but it is much more efficient if you're able to communicate that correctly to your team as well, and actually able to lead them toward that, and actually the results will be much, much better.
Sure. If you don't have those good skills, nobody's going to want you on the team. There's really only so far you can go. There's only so far you can go being this super, super technical person. If you say, I don't want to interact, you can. And we see some clients, like we work with Microsoft, and what a great company that is, that they offer these opportunities for people to rise so far up the ranks just being a technical person. That's where they come from. They're a super technical company. That's in their DNA. I would say that most companies don't, however, have that in their DNA and have specifically designed these decisions that you can rise so far saying, I don't want to manage, or I don't want to deal with anybody else. So we need to add these bits on if we want to. You love programming? Well, you got to do a bit of this too.
Yeah, and I think that's what eventually happens. Like, initially, if you start a company, you have to do everything, right? But you're not good at everything. So now, like, in a perfect world, eventually you should be doing the things that you're best at. And if you could only focus on that, it's very, the results will be good because you're getting better on your field. But life is not only that. So you need to understand the other aspects as well. So that's why leaders should be very well equipped for leading. Like, that should be their specialty, that they should be very good at. And if you're good at that, you will be good at everything else as well.
this segues us very nicely into the first question that we got on the stage. We did the demonstration with me as a hostage. Then we had a keynote with two of our customers discussing how they've used this. And in that time, we got questions on the Votemo app that they would like answered. We, unfortunately, and that's on me when I say we. No, me. I was the leader of that conversation. I did not make us enough time to be able to answer them. So I'm taking the responsibility to record a whole podcast to be able to actually get to those questions. Here's the first one from Omari. He said, how do you rehearse things like project management, conflicts, and communication? I understand how you rehearse the concepts in a tactical field exercise, but what are the office tactical exercises? Very good question.
Very good question. I would say you are like, what's the toughest part in all the project is human beings. And the stress management, I would say. Where the stress comes from in every project is that the closer the deadline, the more stress there is. So you can create a scenario where the same aspects come out as they would come out in a project, like doing a real project. So you can create a similar environment, but it doesn't have to be specifically a project. It can be something else. For example, if we were taught how to stay calm, we were put underwater.
Okay.
And we had to train and survive underwater, and everything underwater is very difficult. And the main thing what you have to do is you have to remain calm. So if you master remaining calm underwater, which is the most dangerous environments, you can now transfer the same understanding to a different field, and you can be better at project management as well. And obviously there are more technical things I think that you can actually implement, like what is our biggest leaks, like what we don't do very well, like maybe our conversations, they lose focus during the meeting. So we can actually practice that, how to actually maintain focus, how to better structure our meeting system. Like if most of the time people come to the meeting and they're not prepared, maybe we adjust that every time when the meeting starts, the first 10 minutes is to prepare for the meeting. So it's in like understanding what are your biggest weaknesses by doing debriefs constantly, and then building up on either your weaknesses, which are very critical for the team success, and build the training around those kind of things. These are the first things that pop to my mind. But it will be more like you can do a broader training session, but you can also focus on a specific skill and turn that training around getting better at, I don't know, debriefing, giving feedback. If we had to make tough decision, what did we actually consider? How long time did it take us to actually make a decision? So you can actually focus the training on a specific detail. You can do it broader. And as it is, like if you have a broader training, then you are more vague on some things. So it's more general. If you focus on a specific problem, then you get better at that specific problem.
So what I take away from that is there's one idea to do practice. So now we are practicing, we're rehearsing. And I want to talk about that because that is a valid thing to do. We can rehearse conversations, for example, and I want to get to that. But another way is that if we know we don't do something well, preparing, sticking to time in a discussion, our practice can be just to be conscious of that weakness while we're doing it next time. So we don't have to set up a fake meeting and then we practice sticking to time. That's a little bit artificial. But we can identify our weaknesses, and then next time, okay, guys, we're just going to really work on keeping this meeting to time. That's our practice, our focus on this today. Then the question is, how do we identify these weaknesses? Debriefs. By debriefing with each other, hey, wow, that meeting really went a long time. Okay, good to know. Next time we're going to focus. We weren't prepared. Good to know. Next time we're going to take 10 minutes before we do it to learn or work out together how we prepare. And then maybe next time we don't need 10 minutes because you're already doing that on your own.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what Jeff Bezos said about Amazon. Like if we had a 2-hour meeting, the first hour is to read the documents. because otherwise people are lying that they actually read it. But now we give them an opportunity to actually read it during the meeting, and then we have a discussion because now we are sure that everyone actually is up to speed. So also one thing is just to figure out what are the weaknesses. Another thing is also to figure out what are our strengths. So if we did something really well, for example, we managed time during this project super well. So what did we do right? And now that's something which becomes your SOP or standard operating procedure, which actually makes you can actually share that knowledge to your other teams that, hey, this worked really well because we prepared during the meeting for the meeting. That's really good because it took away the stress from having everything prepared all the time when you get to the meeting. So always also understand what are your strengths and then utilize on those things, and what are your weaknesses, eventually outsource them or get better.
It's a good one. What our positives are, let's write them out and make sure it's a standard procedure, SOP, standard operating procedure. So either we're not good at something, we're not good at preparing for the meeting, let's say, and we work and we are conscious of it and we get better at it. And we get to a stage where like, yeah, this is manageable. Stop, write it down. Now this is the recipe for how to prepare. We've figured beta version out right now, the alpha version. This is what we should do. So focusing on writing down the strengths and making them our SOPs.
Yeah, so how we do it is that we always talk about what went well, what was right, what went wrong, and what to change next time. And if every person in a team starts to implement that debrief, I mean, there is no way that you're not getting better. You're always improving. You're always getting better next time when you do it again.
I think the debrief time. Now, before we move on for this question, one final part that I want to talk about is we also, though, have a possibility to rehearse some aspects. Now, a meeting going long isn't really something you can rehearse very well. Preparing for a meeting, not quite. But one-on-one things are often can be prepared. So having a difficult conversation with somebody, giving or just having feedback. Hey, there's good and there's bad. We can actually rehearse those things with another person. How would I'm in an office situation. I know that Barry over there, he's done some things well, but we all know that there's some things we've got to look after with Barry. We can do some preparation before we go talk to Barry.
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying also. I mean, it's called like preparation beats performance. Like the more prepared you are, the easier it will be. So every time when we went out to do an operation, we always rehearsed because we didn't want the small details to come out on a target. So rather we rehearsed it. We put our equipment on. We sat on the vehicle. We saw how, if I have a huge hammer over here, maybe it's in the wrong position because of this car is very tiny and I can't get out. Or I have this machine gun and now I'm supposed to be sitting on a, passenger seat, but this is too big of a weapon. So now I can actually see that, okay, actually we need a smaller one. So I take from my armory, I will take a smaller one. So we are trying to eliminate the small mistakes that are going to happen, and just rehearsing it through, it just takes out so many of those small problems that we don't want to deal with on an actual target or an actual project. And that actually just improves you and you're more prepared I think it also goes along with very well with the idea of plan itself is worthless, but planning is everything. And the rehearsal is part of planning because you're still getting repetition in yourself, so you know what to expect if something like that happens, and you're more prepared when the plan doesn't go according to the plan, because it never does.
Yeah.
So you're just pretty much putting yourself in a better position to deal with the problems that you're going to be facing on a target or on a mission or on your project. You're just eliminating those unnecessary ones.
That's very similar advice to what I give people who are trying to do better presentations. And I say, well, what you might need to do is you might need to write that presentation out word for word. You might need to, and that will help you edit it. That will help you get brevity, not waffle on too long. But I actually don't think you should necessarily go up there and say it word for word. The point is to write it all out end to end, so you've got a clear plan, map of what you want to say. Now, I actually think maybe you do need to throw that out at this point and then go onto the stage and do it. And maybe you'll be somewhere in the middle. You won't quite be as short and concise as your script was, but you know where you're going because you've already drawn that map out. And if we keep doing this process, we might find that boundary of preparing a speech, but not sounding like a robot reading, the Prime Minister reads out a speech, something in the middle.
It's pretty much the same as you do in school. Like if you're preparing to cheat and you prepare yourself some notes that you're going to be using at your test, while you are building those notes and while you're building your cheating strategy, you're actually learning.
Yeah.
So when you actually get to that situation where you have to take the test, if you put a lot of time in figuring out how to cheat and you had to write down things, you actually learned, and now you don't even need those cheating papers that you were preparing because you already have that knowledge in your head. So same thing.
How would I then, to bring it back to our original question, how can I then do this preparation and rehearsal for having a difficult conversation in the office?
Well, I think first of all, you need to understand who you're going to be talking with. What are my own tendencies in speaking those things? Because usually you have had those kind of maybe experience before. And now you let the other person act as close to as possible to some sort of a human.
So you get a person, you get somebody else who's not Barry to help you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just take someone who you feel confident with and you can actually train. It's like a sparring partner. Like if you do some combat training, like fighting, then you don't want to. You want to rehearse some moves with the other person, but the other person has to help you. Like if they are super strong and you want to train some sort of a technique on them, and they don't let you, then you're not learning anything because he knows he's stronger. You know you're weak. There's nothing good out of it, but the other person lets you and plays along the game. So that the lesson that you wanted to achieve comes out. And the more you do it, the better you're prepared. And that's pretty much how easy it is.
Okay, so we can mentally think through how the conversations want to go. We can actually try that with someone who's not Barry, who's somebody else, who's a trusted confidant. And that, again, is that we're not probably going to stick to that plan because like any plan, as soon as you go into battle, that plan goes out the window. But the point is that you made some script, some idea beforehand.
And exactly, and there are levels how to do it. Like in military, you can do a map exercise where you're thinking through the maneuvers that the enemy can do to you. So you're a little bit prepared. Then you can do a dress rehearsal where you put your equipment, like we are walking through it. Let's do a walkthrough. Right. So it's next level from the map. Then eventually the last level is that let's do a full dress rehearsal. Like everything as prepared as it would be in that situation. So pretty much if you have a hard negotiation, initially we thought through what we're going to talk about. Then we, sit yourself around the table in the place where you will be sitting while you were doing it. And then you actually take some people who are actually acting and playing the person that you want to do the deal with. So there are so many levels and you can go crazy with it. The more you practice, the better you are, but you should take into account the time available because you can overdo it as well. Because you know that it doesn't matter how much you practice it, the plan will still go wrong. But you're still more prepared, and there are levels to it, and the military has pretty much figured out the system, like which ways they can do based on how much time they have available. So the minimal thing is, okay, let's talk it through. Second, let's play it on the map. Then let's walk it through. Then let's do a full dress rehearsal with everything on, and different things come out.
Okay. All right, next question. Person, is they put. By taking responsibility of hard decisions and serious consequences, eventually there is going to be some regret. How do you cope with that and move on?
So how do you deal with regret?
You've got to make decisions. If we're extreme ownership, it says I'm in control of this. I've got to make a call. As a leader, we have to make decisions, and it's going to be the wrong decision sometimes.
I think two main things. One of the things is time, and one of the concepts or philosophies you should be thinking of that, like you are able to do as good of a decision as you can in that moment based on the factors that you have. So whatever decision you do, it's better than doing no decision. So if you know that the worst thing what I can do is that make no decision, regardless of what decision you made, it's better than doing nothing. Now, the second part is having regret because we make mistakes. And yes, you can go crazy with it and feel for it, but we are not perfect. So there is no point of looking for perfectness because we're still going to be making mistakes. So just make a decision. No, it's better than not doing anything. If something goes wrong, gather information, do your feedback loop, and do it differently next time.
Sure, do it differently next time. So I have regret maybe. So I made a decision and it's upset somebody or caused somebody a bad outcome. First thing I can do is, learn from it so I don't do that again. Maybe there is something that I can do to rebuild the relationship with that person. Hey, I'm sorry about that. I see that my decision made that. Here's how, I don't know, I can put in some effort to support you in the future. I think a lot about as well, what's the opposite when I'm thinking about regret? What else could have I done in that situation? If I did nothing or I made the opposite decision, there could also be a no-win situation. There's going to be negatives either way. Mm-hmm. And if we don't make decisions, then even then, like what's our life then? If we're just in fear of making decisions because we're in fear of making a wrong decision, doesn't sound like a prosperous life.
Actually, like not making a decision can be a decision.
Sure.
So just don't beat yourself up because you're going to make mistakes anyways, but understand that you have a possibility to readjust and just move on. Like we make mistakes and we do best to mitigate that risk of making a better mistake or making a not as crazy mistake. But even if we do, then try better next time. And that's about it. There's nothing you can do to change the history.
No.
It's already passed.
But you're right. You can't change the history, but you can change the future. So no matter good or bad outcomes, take ownership of that decision. Yes, I did that. Don't try and push it onto somebody else or even in your own mind, I did bad because the other guy wasn't giving me enough support or something like that. No, that was me. I didn't prepare enough. And that can sort of help you because it's like, isn't that philosophy then bringing more shame or regret to me? Kinda, but also it's psychologically more toxic if I'm thinking, that was Barry. All right, I have a lot of regret about that. That didn't go how I wanted it, and it was Barry who did that to me. That'll just eat you away.
Yeah, I think that's the normal tendency because it's much easier to see other people doing mistakes. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you say, okay, Louis did that, and the next question you just should be asking is, okay, how did I contribute to that? And if you look deeper, you will always find something that you could do better. And you can take ownership of the situation and then do better next time. And that's pretty much all you can do.
Totally different one here. Like from Patrick asked, is the military and civil leadership in Estonia different than in other countries? Could you bring an example? Or we could even say, what is the relationship, I like to talk about, what is the relationship of the Estonian populace to the military compared to other countries?
Well, I think it's part of our life here because it's mandatory service. But I think that if you're a good leader in military, you could be an excellent leader in civilian life. If you're a good leader in the civilian life, you could be a great leader in the military. So they are very much the same because what you're doing is that you're just solving problem and you're dealing with people. And so I don't think that there is much of a difference. And I think from the both sides, there is a lot to learn. The military guys can learn from the civilian side. The civilian side can learn from the military side because of the different culture, like different avenues or different perspectives. And if you understand both perspectives, you can actually do your decisions better based on the principles. If you're able to like take from one example the principles, and if you're able to like to take those main things out and now transfer those into other field, you're able to make better decisions. But now I'm thinking of the examples, what it is like. Maybe I don't know if you are going to give a very specific detailed plan to a military people, Like, if something goes wrong, they turn to you because you made all the details available and you made them memorize the 85 steps to, I don't know, put together a weapon. Now, what's the likelihood that the person is able to memorize it? Maybe some people are, but most of the people are not. Now, if you say the same thing to a person in the civilian life, like, this is how you conduct a sales meeting, and you provide them 85 steps how to do it, it's very unlikely that they will remember it. So it doesn't matter where you over detail things. We are still human beings, and we can't remember all of those things. So we rather give them the intent. Like, if I give you an intent in the civilian life, hey, we need to create this PowerPoint, and the main purpose of this PowerPoint is to open up the mind of the customer to see that actually we are awesome. We are doing a good job. So now the way how they do it, it's up to them. So there are many ways how to achieve this goal. The same thing applies to making an ambush. Like, we need this vehicle to be stopped in this location. That's the intent. Now, the way how you stop it, it's up to you. So you have much more flexibility and maneuverability in accomplishing the plan when you are able to think yourself, how would you do it? And it also provides more innovation, more new ways how to solve this problem. And I think that's how it's the exact same world, same things. If you give a very detailed plan in the military, nobody understands it. If you give a very detailed plan in the civilian life, nobody understands it either. So I would say that could be one of the examples, but there are many of those.
I'm thinking about the example of how we went to America recently. We trained with Echelon Front, Jocko's team, and the people that he's with. And some of the cultural observations I made, and it was very good for me. So first of all, how does Estonia relate to the military? Different to America, I guess, to answer this question from a different angle. I think it's different. As you said, every able-bodied man in Estonia has done the military service for 8 to 10 months or something like this. We are also on the front lines right out here with a big bear next door. So these things are very realistic to us. And we're having conversations with Echelon Front, and they were saying that in America, even though it's Jocko and Leif and the SEALs and JP and they're all good to go, they are not necessarily leaning into the military any more than they do. Certainly, it's all about that, but not any more than they currently do, because they're finding that in American society, there's that friction point of, military, and they can get over it, but they're finding that if they flank a little bit, if they don't hit everyone over their head so hard with the military thing, they can actually get in a little bit further into business. Okay, there's always those fired up dudes who are like, yes, this is what we need to bring. But then there's the more regular population of companies and people who have never had any experience of the military and are even a little bit skeptical. Maybe America's a very polarized country around these things. So they're not necessarily leaning into that. And in our conversations, they were very fascinated by us here because we lean into it a little bit more. Now, we're at a different stage of development, combat ready to Echelon Front, absolutely. But combat's in the name. It's right there in the name, combat, right? We're putting it front and center. I think that is working for us here because we're at a different stage of development to Echelon Front, and because of that familiarity in society with the military, it's more there. Every guy's already done it. It's on our minds every day that there could be some tanks coming over the border any moment. And I compare back to thinking like in Australia. I had no connection to the military. No one's invading Australia. So there was no reason for me to have that. So we can relate to people, or there's more chance in a company to have people that have either served or have a partner that served or some connection. So it's not a big, kind of thing.
Yeah, you have to understand and take the local, culture into your context, how you actually present yourself, because the intent is to pretty much show leadership. Doesn't matter what is the source behind it. And if you go to Israel, everyone is military. They understand this kind of the idea behind it. If you go to, I don't know, Australia maybe, then there is not so much of that. So you need to adjust, and you have to ask feedback from your customers. And that's what we have been doing for 2 years. After every course, we just ask debrief. What do you think we should change? What was good? What was bad? And then we adjust based on that. And what we have at the moment, I think it's pretty good in terms of having the balance, because some people like military examples more, some people like business examples. But you have to find that sweet spot, and you just have to do it according to what your customer needs. If the customers would say, based on what we say, that, hey, this is too military and we want more business examples, and we said, no, this is not what we do. We talk military, then eventually we have no customers.
Right. And I think I think that ever so gently adjusting course is in our future. I think on the short term, not even necessarily in the medium term, but it's way off. I can see that as we expand, go to more countries that are further away from the front lines, even, that we might have to judge that. But what you were saying there about the people want military examples, some people want business examples. This is where my thinking is a lot at right now, because I'm trying to develop my story for the 4 laws of combat, for the mindsets for victory. That's why we're training with Echelon Front. And to get my story straight, that I'm not this military person, but I've learned from these examples. And where my thinking is right now, like, I will be your guide. I'm a dude who's all fired up, sure, but I'm not no military. I never really thought I would be in this situation. There was no chance I was doing any military service when I was 18. 0% chance that little Louis Zezeran was doing service. But it's my job to guide you through these examples. That I think what they do have is the military examples explain it really clearly. Already in this 40 minutes, I think you've described like 10 ideas with a military example that I'm just like, I don't know if I've just heard them so much, but I'm like, bam, I've got it. Bam, I've got it. Where I listen to some business guy drone on about it, and I'm just, I start falling asleep. So my job is to take you from the military example and then guide you down the path to the business example. And the reason I would never want us to only ever give business examples, because I think it's that journey down the path is important. Now, we got to have that in balance. As you say, we can't all be military, all that. You've got to have the right amount of friction. And I think you've never been in the military, but you hear a military example, good. That gives you a bit of friction, because with friction, we learn. If I just hear and I'm just spoon-fed business examples, I feel like something's lost in there.
So I think it's the same with kids, right? Okay. Like if you teach them math, you can talk about numbers and everything, like 3 plus 3 is 6. But if you say, okay, 3 apples plus 3 apples is how much? 6 apples. So you're trying to use the context of what the person on the other side of the table understands better. And the better you do it, the easier it is for them to understand.
Okay. 2 more, hopefully shorter ones. Martin. I don't know, is it our Martin? Some other. There's a lot of Martins in Estonia. Who knows? What are the main learning points usually from these short tactical exercises? Is the tactical part important? This would have been done probably 10 minutes after we did the demonstration.
So I think one of the main lesson is that people understand how many things there is to learn. Like, and also they always learn about their ego and how different like fields are very similar with the field that I'm working in. Like they understand, they see the connection. Like it's totally different field, but it actually works based on the same principles. So I think these 3 are like most common ones in my opinion. It's just understanding that if you're good at something and it worked out for you in that field, you put the same ideas, same principles in the other field, you can get as good over there as well. So there is not many fields that are so different from each other, because all of them involve human beings.
So I'll go back to the question again. The main learning points from these short tactical exercises, I'm thinking about now when we do our FTX, actually we're saying we're not worried about tactics. Actually, we're worried about strategy. So you're running around laser fields with a gun. We don't really care that you went in the building that way rather than that way or something like this. It's more the big picture. But see, the last line, is the tactical part important? Because no, but yes. No, in that, no, we don't. How you hold the gun and which side of the stage you storm the stage from, not really that important. But as you were just saying, the tactics I know in one field, the tactics teach us something about the strategy. I want to learn some more things about myself. Why did I want to do that way? Or the tactics I use in one field, how they relate to another.
Yeah, I think like for example, if you have to use a weapon, now it is very different if you know how to use the weapon or if you don't know how to use the weapon. Same kind of things can be related. Like if I know how to use a PowerPoint or if I don't know how to use a PowerPoint. So we give you like a tool. And you can see that, if you maneuver this like that, you will get more efficient. If the team has worked together and they have learned the same tactics, they have the same signals, they are more efficient to understand each other better. Same applies in everywhere else. So they're able to, in my opinion, like there are a lot of tactical things where you can attract a lot of kind of principles out. For example, if two people are moving on a field and they have to cover move, one has to shoot, one has to move. You learn about communication, you learn about moving. So now if you take that into your own world, you understand that, we have to communicate the same way, we have to move and cover for each other. So I think those are the kind of things that you can learn from those techniques. But I think that those are like secondary. The learning points are more like principles, not that, or maybe, for example, one thing what we use is a readback, right?
Sure.
Like readback is something that military utilizes all the time. Now you can take, that's a tactic. That's a tactic how to communicate better. Now if you take the readback into your office, you are able to utilize that as well the same way and you get the same effect. So there are some techniques that you can overcome straight. Same principle, same mechanism. Me opening mouth, listening to you. Same thing, you can apply it in a meeting, wherever you are interacting with other people. So there are a lot of those things that can be taken from there and put it in use in the actual life.
Right, so tactics at a tactical, like we're getting quite semantic, I realize now with the words here, but there are some tactics that are quite broad. Cover and move means many things. It can mean on the battlefield, looking after each other. It can mean in your office, supporting somebody because they have to go, the wife is sick, so they got to go out for a few hours, so I'm going to support you. It can mean that same thing. I think kind of what some people think of is, if I learn a deep technical skill, let's separate that from tactics. Like the way you walk into that hall and then one person went there and there and there, there's cover and move, but there's also some quite deep. Now we're getting to deep technicals. Do I need to know how to strip a gun apart? No. Do I need to know all the details of PowerPoint? Real deep stuff? No, but I probably might need to know the broad stuff of how to use it. So separating deep technical, no, fine. We might not need that, but tactical.
I think that the main things that you can actually like straight away take from the military and put it in use are more the ways how we communicate, how do we plan, what kind of tools we use in the civilian side, what tools we're using in the military side, what are the pros and cons, and those kind of things you can straight away just take it and start using it the same exact way how they are used in the military. Like, if I want to understand their perspective, I have to ask open-ended questions. I have to listen. Exactly the same technique that uses works in the military, you take it into your own world. It's absolutely the same technique, same result.
I think it's just, maybe it's an education thing about what people think the military is. And this types back to if people in Estonian society, a lot of men have done the service. Well, it doesn't mean that they're just all fired up for military stuff. It means that they appreciate that the military actually isn't just storming a building. It's the methods that we plan with. It's the way we communicate. And they're like, okay, yes. If I've never done much of the military, all I see is you guys getting fired up, running over things, pushing buildings over, and go, that's all the military is.
And again, like, okay, let's do a demonstration before. Let's do a rehearsal before. Let's do things more practical. Like all of those things, you can do it in your own side. Let's not only talk about theory, let's also put demonstration and tactics over there, or the practice over there. So same kind of things, same words, different environment, but same things still apply.
All right, we're going to round it off with one question. I don't know if this question is going to get your ego, Remo.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. I think this one was looking at the timestamp just after we'd finished the demonstration. The live hostage rescue mission that you performed would probably result in a lot of casualties, including the hostage.
I agree.
How do you respond to that situation?
I agree. Now, what I could object is that if you do it with the laser tag weapons, nobody will get hurt.
Okay.
So, but if it will be real guns, sure. But if it's real gun on the both sides, yeah, it gets down to a training. What is your preparation? And definitely a lot of people would have got killed. Everyone would have been dead from the both sides.
Sure. So, okay. So the lesson that we want to take away is that we want our training to be realistic. There's a balance. We want our training to be realistic. Absolutely. But also, we can't have people dying we can't have these severe consequences in an IT world. The example might be if I want to learn how to code and do some new crazy coding or put in some new system, I don't go and straight away implement it in the production server. No, I mess around. That's why we've got staging. That's why we've got a test server. That's why I've got my local machine. So we've got to balance that off. We need to be realistic, but also not having severe consequences.
And also same thing applies. Yes, it has to be realistic, but the training can have also a certain point that you want to come up. There's a lesson that needs to be learned. So in the realistic scenario, if you just let it flow, this mistake may not come out. But if you want the teamwork to come out, you can set up the scenario in a way where it comes out all the time. Mm-hmm. So you can actually shape it in a way what are the main lessons that we need to learn from here, and you can actually look it through. So there is a little bit of theatrics in that sense, and you are able to adjust towards that. But overall, I think the more realistic it is, the realest mistakes come out what you will be making when the situation is actually real. So, but you can actually tweak there and there, but yeah, you have to find the balance. It all comes down what's the intent of this training, what you want to achieve.
Okay, are we role-playing the whole thing, or do we have one particular part that we want to focus on? We weren't demonstrating an actual hostage rescue. This is not what was being demonstrated.
One of the scenarios is pretty much how do you prioritize and execute? If you give them do it whichever way you want, this may never come up. But if you put a tough decision there, for example, you have to go and hit the target, but at the same time, while you're moving towards the target, you understand that one of the helicopter crashed. So now you have to make a decision. So now this is a really clear prioritize and execute thing. Which way we go? What are our values? Based on what we make this decision. And if you set that kind of scenario up, then that main topic is something that you can actually debrief. So you can always, that's why it's very important when we speak in the beginning, figure out what is your biggest weakness or strength, and now let's test it, or let's showcase it so everyone else understands it as well, because this team is very good at prioritizing. Now, this team may be not. So now, based on what these guys do correctly, let's take the same scenario and see what these guys don't do, and now let's put them together and learn from each other. And now, through those kind of lessons, you can actually transfer knowledge from one of the strengths or weaknesses to another team, and they will play it through, so they now have made the same mistake themselves. So now there is a little bit of bigger likelihood that if that thing happens in the real life, they are just better prepared, they're better rehearsed to make a better decision.
I like it. All right. So that's our questions. I like this. We should do this more often. We're just going to go online, ask people questions, come in the studio and answer them.
That would be awesome.
Every time I want to do it, I'm a little bit selfish, because every time I do it, I learn something in our discussions here. And I hope you've all learned something as well today. Follow us, Combat Ready, on all the social medias. You can follow Remo. You can follow myself. This is Combat Ready. If you need some help, get in contact. We can help you with your teamwork and your leadership. Remo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.